for 18 months. When I moved back to a house with the 7 kids, it about drove me nuts.
I guess that's a good way to start a
Yeah.
podcast. Welcome back. This is the
You have the
Alchemist Nation
wherewithal.
podcast.
You build character.
With myself, Gualter Amarelo, Michael Schein, Mitch Jaworski, and we're going to be diving in today with Gary Eaker talking about how to scale up businesses. He became a fund manager. He's been investing in real estate for a while now. He started small, and then actually before he started, he was actually in the military. So we're going to talk a
I'm
lot
still
about
small
leadership
compared
and
to you, Gualter.
oh yeah,
Still
you ain't
very
got to go to the
small.
gym, man.
But not in
All right, so
stature.
let's start it off. Brian Mazzilli was interviewed with us last week, and at the end of that show, we ended up asking Brian. We said, "Hey, who do you within Alchemist Nation, somebody you know who's already in our community that you'd like to know more about?" And he said the first person out of his mouth was Gary Eaker, and so we asked him. We were like, "Well, why Gary? You know what is it about it?" And he said, "I heard Gary speak at the summit, and." I was blown away. He said I took more notes during Gary's talk than any of the other talks. And he said I also was more inspired by Gary's talk than any of the other talks. I personally was very offended by that because I did most of the talks, but I stepped back, put the ego aside, and I said, all right, like we could do that. We can have Gary on the podcast. We can interview him. And Brian said that the reason he took so many notes, was so interested in having you on the podcast was because he hadn't really gotten a chance to pull you aside and ask you questions and get to know you better. He's seen you around, you're super involved because you're the COO, but he hadn't actually gotten to learn more about your background, where you come from, where all those tips and everything and leadership came from in the military. So that is why you're here. I know when I messaged you, you were like, dude, I'm still a small fry. Like, what do you mean? I'm just not doing much, but
I,
apparently.
I will say at the summit 2 years ago, I wasn't able to make last year, but I was also very impressed with Gary's speech. It was amazing, and it was really good. So yeah,
Well, thanks.
Inspiring,
inspiring.
I'm
educational,
flattered.
informative. Mitch, do you
Yep.
remember?
I am ashamed to admit I actually missed his speech this past summit. I was not in the room.
And here's why. Here's why Mitch missed. Because as soon
I,
as he heard it was going to be a leadership talk, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that."
I'm out of here.
no, I sadly was
Employees
resolving
not interested.
I was resolving last minute wardrobe issues actually. So I was actually in the mall solving a problem.
I was going to make a joke that you were in the mall, and then you just said
And I
you were in
was.
the
I
mall.
literally was in the mall.
What would be funnier
Scrambling.
is if you were solving my wardrobe issues at the summit. Were you getting me sneakers or shoes?
I was not. I was getting me. That's what happens when you leave all your stuff at your home and not realize it until you actually get to Orlando.
Wow.
Where's my
Wow.
luggage? My luggage
Yeah,
didn't come
exactly.
out.
I'm like, where's my suit bag thing that had all the shirts and thing? Oh, it's home apparently.
Oh, that
So
stinks.
for
Good
everybody
thing we were at
who's
a mall.
Yeah.
for everybody who's seen kind of the change in Alchemist Nation, we've made some really big pivots. So one of the big pivots that we made was a couple of years ago. We brought in somebody for operations, and Gary has been transformational in making sure that we do efficient work, that we're getting our mission taken care of. He's also helped us dial in our mission. So one of the things we did was we started targeting a more hyper-focused avatar, somebody who is more capable of becoming a millionaire, becoming financially free. We did a lot of work with, let's just call them broke people, because we were really nice and we really wanted to help a lot of broke people. It was our mission. We're still about that, but we can't do it all by ourselves. It can't be the Gualter show. It has to be 100 millionaires who are inspired to build 100 millionaires. And the more we work on our millionaires, the more they're able to go out and build their millionaires. So Gary, you came to that. Before we dive into it, how did you get into the military? I
How
mean,
I got into
I
the
was
military.
offered the option many times and I just said no. So, and Mike, I'm sure didn't spend any time in the military. Mitch didn't spend any time in the military. So a lot of people say
No.
no, but most of my business partners have. So why the military and how does that lead into real estate?
The funny thing is when I was in high school, I hung out with these groups, and there's all these groups in high school, and they were all gung ho about going into the military, and I was not one of them. I was like, nah, man, I not even interested. Didn't never cross my mind, right? And of all of those groups and people that I hung out with that were gung ho about going to the military, the only people that went into the military was me, and it's crazy that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was funny. So we started. I was doing I got out of college. I did roofing for a while, and then I went into EMS, and I was working EMS, emergency medical services, and at the
You
and
were
I
you
had
were you were paramedic?
an EMT. I
Okay.
worked with
Okay.
paramedics. So
Yep.
paramedics, and we used to work paramedic and EMT teams in South Carolina,
Cool.
and so I was doing that for about a year, and um, my father-in-law's a preacher called me up, and he's like, "God told me that you're going to come be my minister of music." I was like, "What?" And I was
Super
like,
random.
so
Yeah.
it was super random. It was like, really? And so anyway, so we took that as a calling sort of, and it was me and my wife. We had one kid at the time. Moved to Florida. Went to work with this guy. The guy was like, "Look, if you'll come down on a home," he called it a home missionary base. You come down on a home missionary basis and gather some support and work for a year, and we'll hit it. We'll be on it. We'll go out. We'll do visit. We'll build up the congregation, and after that, I'll be able to afford to put you on staff after a year. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. We'll go do it. I was young and dumb, right? And so we go down and we worked my butt off. About 9 months into this, I have another guy show up in the office, and I was like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm the new assistant pastor." And see, I'm here on a home mission basis, and I'm going to work for a year. And after a year, the pastor says he'll be able to put me on staff. I called my wife that day. I was like, "Babe, I got to get a job. This ain't going to work out." so, so I went and got a job. I finished my year that I promised the guy, right? But so I was looking for jobs, and the
Did you
pastor's
say
son.
he was related to you?
No, no, he was
Oh,
my father-in-law's pastor. So
okay.
he was my
Gotcha.
father-in-law went to his church,
Gotcha.
and so the pastor's son asked me, he's like, "Hey, man, you ever thought about going in the military?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Well, man, here's an option." And so started going and looking at that, and I had, and I told my wife, I was like, "Look, I'm really considering going in the military." After I looked at it for a little bit because I liked what I was seeing, and I said, "If you get pregnant again, I'm definitely going in." And I came in one day and she was in the floor crying, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Oh, I'm pregnant, but I don't want you to join the military just because I'm pregnant." So yeah, we found out that we're really good at making babies, especially by accident,
Yeah.
and it took us forever to figure out what made that happen. But so
Hold
we
on.
went.
Before we go any further, so anybody who doesn't know Gary, the first thing I do when I introduce Gary, which I didn't do on this podcast, which is weird,
He
is
does
tell them that Gary has 9 kids. So carry on,
nine
Gary. Let
kids.
let that one
Yeah,
sink out there,
nine
sit out
kids.
there.
I've
So
got. Actually, I'm having my ninth grandbaby this month, and in December we'll have our 10th. I'll finally have more grandbabies than I have kids.
Kids.
So
Wow. Amazing.
yeah, hey, there's a kid.
So wait
Speaking
a
of
sec, that
Emerson.
seems so you have a baby and then one on the way and then wasn't that a tough decision to leave to go into the military or were you like National Guard or something like that?
Well, and I considered National Guard, but I really liked the idea of it not being part-time, and just I'm one of those people that when I dedicate my time to something, I want to go full-time and go do it. And
Mm.
so that's it was sort of all in, right? And so we jumped in. It was 1992, late 1992 is when I joined the Army. And joined the Army because I went to the Marines and the Navy. Navy's like, you got a kid with another one on the way. We're not interested. And so Navy and Marines, a lot of people don't know this, but they're the same branch, right? Marines are a subgroup of the Navy, and so that took care of them. And then Air Force was like, we would take you, but you would not get to choose what you want to do. You will do what we tell you you're going to want to do. And I was like, that's not so good for me. Army was like, yeah, hey man, you can do whatever you take the ASVAB, and they're like, you can do whatever you want to do. Yeah, what do you want to do? And so at the time it was either medical or airplanes is what I wanted, and they're like, yeah, man, we put you into medical. And so I went in the medical field in the Army. Did that for 24 years. Started out as a medic, then went into nursing, and then went into hospital administration. By the end, I was a senior hospital administrator when I
Were you
retired from the
were you
Army.
obviously 24 years. So your wife was with you traveling, or how
Oh
did
yeah,
that work?
we probably moved in 24 years. We probably moved 10 times, something like that.
Cool.
Eight or nine. It was about every 2 to 3 years we were picking up and moving. We spent we actually I did 3 tours in Europe, so we spent about 10 years in Germany.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so about
Nice.
almost half my career was in Germany, and then another 4 years was in Alaska, which is considered an overseas tour, even though it's the United States. It's still a long way away from the lower 48, so they consider it an overseas tour.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
Gary, I got a question. So I met you. Do you remember where we met?
I know exactly where we met.
So where did we meet?
We met at the Brandon subgroup of Tampa Bay RIA.
So you were in the audience, you were in the room. I was on stage,
Hmm.
which is about where I like to think I belong. And
Hmm.
I was talking about something about real estate. I mentioned, free ticket to this event, come here, how did you go from I'm not gonna go to any events, I'm not gonna spend any money to eventually showing up to our event?
Well, see, the thing you have to understand is we had spent a lot of money. We had spent like 40 grand on real estate education, uh, event stuff, and so we had done that and come back, and we've been going for about a year, trying our hand at different things, right? And not really getting a lot of anywhere. And it was but we've been faithful at TB RIA, making sure that we were there every time. We would go to the main meeting, and then we would go to the Brandon subgroup. And you showed up and you're like, I'm having this 100 Millionaires Summit, and we're coming, it's the greatest real estate event in the world. Come to the 100 Millionaires Summit. And I was like, I'm like, we ain't going to another conference that until we start to make money, right? Until we're into money, because we had a lot of the group that I was with that you paid $40,000 to wanted to make sure that you got also with their vendors that were also selling you stuff that you didn't need yet, like people that were like helping you set up multiple
LLC. Yeah.
LLCs and
Yep.
trusts and all this kind of stuff, which you don't need all that until you got money to protect. There's no sense in putting together protection until you got something to protect, right? And so I
Exactly.
spent all this money on here. I learned later on, if I'd have taken that 40 grand and actually like put it into marketing, you know, that I'd have been a lot better off than spending the 40 grand on an education that I could have got for a lot cheaper. But I mean, the vast majority of people that I know that are in the real estate world went through about the same thing. We all went through it.
Yep.
So it was good. We had spent that money. We got a decent education. They taught us good, right? But it's the same thing that I got off the Rich Dad program, for $300. Same thing. So uh, so we had been doing that. We had a lot of the shiny object syndrome where we're like, oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try this over here. Let's try this. So we weren't getting really anywhere. And it wasn't when you showed up, we were like, we're done with real estate conferences. But then you were like, but I'll give it to you for free. Just show up in Orlando. You can come for free. I was like, all right, we'll go. And I told my wife, I said, but we ain't buying jack. They're going to try to sell us something. So we're not buying nothing. And so we held out. We went. It's a 3-day event. It was the last day before we actually purchased, but that was back when we were doing business in a box. And
Mhm.
really super that really set us off because the what we had been missing is our network, and that's what we learned from Alchemist Nation is how to build networks, how to add people into your network, and then how to take people from your network and use your network to add value to other people. So I started building a big network and I was putting people together. I got so much satisfaction. Somebody come to me and say, I've got this problem. And I'm like, oh, I got somebody. Here, let's get these two together. Boom, problem solved. So I got a lot of satisfaction out of that. It wasn't until, and I was having people bring me deals, say, hey, I've got this deal. Do you know anybody who's got money? And I had people come in and saying, I got money I got to get it into a deal. Got any deals? So I was like a connector. I was a big time connector and putting people together. And then I had one guy that brought me a deal, and he said, you know somebody's got money? I said, tell me about the deal. I said, well, maybe. And so I presented it to somebody else, and I just got them their phone numbers, got them together. And I thought that would be the last I heard of it. But then the guy with the money calls me back and he's like, yeah, so I want to be in this deal, but I don't want to do the paperwork and I don't want to do none of the stuff for it. So I want you to handle that for me. And I was like,
Awesome.
that's brokering money, and I'm not sure that's legal. Let me check. So I called a lawyer, called another lawyer. He said, call the state of Florida and call the state of Florida. And the state of Florida is like, if this is an investment deal or it's a investment or commercial properties, no license required. It's like, go for it. It's a contract between you and the person with the money. And so I was like, all right. So and that sort of got me into brokering private money, brokering money into deals. And so started doing that, just as a side item. So that actually got me into the view of some people that were raising money here for multifamily deals. And I actually brokered some of this. The deal that I brokered money into was actually up in Chicago in Calumet City. But then I also brokered some of his money into another deal, which was a ground up build doing townhomes down here. And that got me with some a builder, and the builder after that came to me and said, hey, can you help us raise some money on these deals? And so I was helping them with that kind of stuff.
Amazing.
And then I got an opportunity. Somebody in my network brought me a deal that was that's on the coast, one of the houses that got flooded during the hurricane. He had been managing the house, and so he had been the property manager, and now the investor wanted to get rid of it, and so he brought it to me. I got it under contract. I went back to the same builder who had asked me to help him raise money. I said, hey, you want to help me do a ground up build? Because I ain't never done this before. He's like, yeah, man, well, let's do it. And so that's where I'm in the middle of now. I'm in the middle of a ground up build development out in Indian Rocks Beach, and it's we're tearing down an old house and building a $2 million mansion.
Before we get into that deal, because there's a lot of deals like that.
Nice
I know
job.
it's sick, right? He's skipped a
job.
couple of steps in his
Yeah, okay.
development. One, he does a weird thing where he actually rents out his RV. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be hanging out in his RV in
That's not
July. I think
weird.
I'll be
There's
down
a lot
there.
of people that do that.
No, but I've never heard of it because it's in your house, like it's on your yard, and the
Yeah.
R and then you bring it out, and it's somewhere else, and it's rented. And then the other weird thing you do is you have an ADU. You have like a
I
shed
built
that
it.
you
Yeah.
converted into a
I
house
converted it. Yes. It
in
was a
your
shed.
backyard.
Mm.
So you like
So
got
yeah,
these things that you're using, and then you're like, well, my family isn't here right now. Why don't I just convert this into something? And because you have 10 kids, 9 kids, 9 grandkids, so
nine
you
kids.
need this ADU because people are flying in, they're visiting. And then the other deal you did a unique deal where you actually wholesaled one of the larger dollar amounts that I see in the wholesaling space. You didn't get a $5,000 fee, you didn't get like a $10,000 fee. You got a pretty decent wholesale fee. What was that wholesale fee you did, or how did that deal start?
Well, between me and my partner, we made 90 grand on it. So that it was, so this is actually from my network. The same guy that I had been brokering his money for him to other places, he calls me up one day. He's like, hey, I've got this friend who is his brother passed away and he needs to get rid of the house and he's the executor, but he's my friend and I don't want to negotiate with my friend. He's like, so I want you to negotiate with him. and so and so I did the negotiations, got the thing under contract, and we were actually going to flip it. It was in Colorado. And I was going to fly out there, put together a team, get them on it and start the flip, and then go out there every couple of weeks and meet up with them. And just by chance, I did what Alchemist Nation had Gualter had taught me to do. When you're looking for somebody, get to Facebook groups and start looking for team members on the Facebook groups. So I had gotten into a bunch of the Facebook groups for Denver real estate and was looking for team members. And some guy said he was from New Western, and he said I've
Mitch
got
already doesn't like the story. He's already,
oh
this is
Oh,
going south.
no no no.
ironically, my last deal I bought was through New Weston. It only took them 2 years for them to actually have a deal that I liked after I negotiated down the price quite a bit.
Well, I'm surprised
Thank you for the
because
deal, though, guys.
I've never
Mitch, you're the
seen a
first person
deal
I
from
know
New
that closed a
Western
New
that I would
Western
buy.
deal. So,
So
That is
I'm
it.
good.
I'll take that as a pump to my negotiating skills.
But negotiating it down, you're good on you because
Thank
the
you.
anyway, so I had a house under contract for 250. The guy from New Western, he had posted in one of these groups, I just closed my 6th deal. I'm going for 8 this month. If you got a house under contract or for sale, shoot me a text. So I shot him a message. I said, how much would you give me for this address? And he quoted me 110,000 more than what I had it under contract for. So I called my partner. I was like, bro, we may not need to flip this because what we were planning on getting for for our ARV is what they were offering me from New Western on, on the contract. And so I ended up posting it back out there into one of the wholesaling groups and said, I've got this under contract. I do not own the property. I'm on with a lawyer, so I need to make sure that I word this correctly. I did. I did say
Not
I
legal
was
advice,
specific.
not financial advice.
I was specific that I said I did not own the property, but I have this property under contract, and I'm willing to wholesale it. And so I actually put it under contract for I think for 340, and I had it under contract for 250. And I ended up
Wow.
not actually wholesaling it. I actually did a double close. So I used my partner's money to close on it the first time, and I paid him like 2% for to have his money in the deal for a day, and then it went back out, and then
Amazing.
yeah, so it was a $90,000 total, but so my partner got about a third, I got about 2/3, and then the state of Colorado got a good chunk of it too, which that one took us by surprise. And I still got my CPAs are working on getting that back from I had to
Oh yeah,
file
state
taxes
income
in
tax.
Colorado, and I never even set foot in the place.
I feel your pain. I got to pay that Massachusetts tax, even though I live in Florida,
Yeah, yeah.
flipping
Oh,
houses.
talking to that, here's something I did not know, and this is totally off the subject. But did you know that if you work for a company that's headquartered in New York, it doesn't matter where in the country you live, you have to pay New York City state tax or New York City taxes and New York state
Wow.
taxes?
Yep.
Wow.
That's insane. And I only found out about this because my son-in-law just went to work for a company that's stationed in New York City, and he has to pay city taxes and state taxes in New York.
Hmm. Wow. I can't hear you,
Walter, you just went.
Gualter.
Gualter, you just went mute, bro.
You're not muted,
It's
but
not
you're
muted.
mute.
I don't see a mute, but we can't hear you.
Now you're muted. Now you're not.
Now he's not muted, and now he's not
Still
making
can't
any
hear you.
sound. Yeah. So there it is. All right, guys. So what was the next question Gualter was going to ask me?
I mean, I was actually curious about, do you know, and it doesn't really matter, but curiosity got the cat. The wholesaler that because essentially you wholesale to a wholesaler essentially.
No, no. I actually ended up wholesaling to a guy that's going to flip it,
Oh, okay.
and
Oh,
he
okay. So
did
I thought you had
contact
wholesale
me.
it to the wholesale. Okay, never mind then. My question is moot.
Yeah, he contacted me. So that property, so we had an appraiser go out and look at the property. And the appraiser put a checklist of stuff that needed to be fixed on it, right?
Check.
He's like,
Test.
yeah, I got you now, Walter.
You're
Getting
back.
better.
I'm back. I'm
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So
Little
we had an
quiet.
appraiser say check this, and that will bring it to average status, and it'll be worth $360,000, right? Then he said at maximum value, maximum ARV would be 470. So when I
Wow.
was dealing with the person, I was like, okay, I have a checklist that says, and it had prices of how much it was going to cost to have everything done. I have a checklist that says this is what needs to be done to bring it to average value. So I'm going from average value and I did it times 0.7 minus the repair costs. I came to 250. I said, same thing. If we're going to go to ARV of 470, I did the same, and it still came to 250. I'm like, so there's my offer, bro, 250, and we put it under contract for that. So the guy that bought it from me for 360 said he put $70,000 into it and sold it for $560,000. He
Wow.
contacted me afterwards via Facebook Messenger. He's like, bro, I'm looking at the tax records. I see you made 90 grand on that deal. I was like, yeah, man. So it was a good deal. And he's like, you did awesome. You got any more you can bring to me? And I was like,
Yeah.
why? And he's like, because he had made like 110,000 on it after putting 70,000 into it. So I don't know if the appraiser just didn't know what he was talking about. But definitely because this guy was a realtor that flipped houses, and he definitely knew the market better than what we could see from the appraisal because, everyone else that was working on the project didn't know the market. Even the guy who had possession of the house, he had not lived there. He was just up there to take care of it because his brother had lived there. And so we were going off what the appraiser told us about the market, and the people that actually had boots on the ground and were actually working in that market had a lot better knowledge of what the thing was worth.
That's crazy. So how does my sound? Does my voice
Sound
Great.
better
You
now.
sound great.
back? All right, I'm
Yeah.
Yeah.
back. So you did the math. You couldn't see any more profit to be made, but you saw a whole bunch of work on one side, and then you decide I'm going to do this other side where I just let this thing go, make my money. This guy just knew the game, right? Possibly had you done what they call novations, where you got under contract and put it on MLS, maybe you could have gotten more. But if you'd done all the renovations, maybe it would have cost more, right? This guy was a local guy. He had,
Hmm.
his efficiencies. He's doing 8 flips a year. Like, there's a good chance he's got better cost to finish these things and make
Hmm.
money. $70,000 renovation sounds very affordable to me. I don't
And he had it
know.
done quick. He had it done in under 2 months.
I don't know a lot of
So
guys flipping single family houses with a $70,000 renovation anymore. That doesn't seem like the average cost. Maybe Mitch gets away with that in Fitchburg, in,
But
in
I haven't done
Gardner and
one. I haven't
Athol.
done one in Fitchburg, but it's ironic you said
Gardner.
that. I'm literally 70K is going to end up being my final budget on my current flip in Winchendon.
yeah.
Nice.
Sounds
Hey,
about
just to
right.
let you guys know, I got a thunderstorm going on here. So if I freeze or drop out, that's what happened.
Yeah, well, we'll just make the rest of the podcast about Mitch's
Yeah. About Mitch
project
just
he's doing in
flip.
Gardner.
There
Which
you
is
go.
About my latest
Winchendon.
flip.
Yeah.
So you did a lot of leadership. Before we get into leadership, the ADU, what made you decide to go in, convert that into a rental property? Well,
Well,
where
that's we were
was
looking from the beginning. We were looking our criteria for buying a house was that it had to have rentable property on it. So when we looked at the place was not a livable. It was actually set up as a studio for taking pictures. Some lady had been using it for picture taking studio, and then half of the building was just walled off, and it was opened up, and they used to store. It was just a plain cement floor, and they stored lawnmowers and stuff in there, right? So, so we took that though, and when we saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." Because we tore down the wall, put in a kitchen and a bath, kitchenette and a bath. So it's got a bath with a shower and then a kitchenette. So it doesn't have a full like a stove and everything. We got a small fridge freezer in there, and then hot plates and it's like a convection slash
Yeah.
microwave. It's one of those multi things that sits on the countertop.
Yeah.
So yeah, cost $30,000 to do the conversion. I started out renting it on Furnish Finders to traveling nurses, and when I started renting it, I was renting it for 2,000 a month. And
wow, 2,000 a
yeah,
month for a $30,000 renovation? That's
yeah,
hard to do.
I made all the money back in the first 18 months.
You're way ahead of
So,
the trend because a lot of the states are really emphasizing ADUs now because
oh
there's
yeah.
such a shortage of housing
Yeah.
that they're getting in battles with like fancy towns because the towns
Hmm.
don't want people, but the states are like, wait a second, we don't have enough space for people to live. So you were ahead. You're a
Yeah, for sure.
trendsetter. Who knew? Yeah.
Yeah, we have
So
the city of Fall River giving me a hard time on 2 deeded condos. They're like, well, the work was never done. I'm doing the work now. They were deeded in 2004. We're just getting to it. You can't go back. You already approved these plans 21 years ago.
20 years ago.
They don't understand that in Fall River because Portuguese work so hard that they're like, wait a second, somebody wasn't working on this for this long?
They give me such a hard time. They're like, wait, hold on. You didn't do it already? You
Yeah,
must have
right,
done it and done
exactly.
something again and then brought it like you're onto something here. No,
Yeah.
the guys I bought it from never did it and I never did it. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
all right, so Gary, you got into leadership. right? You're in the military. You became a master sergeant. Most people don't know what a master sergeant is unless you've been in the military. None of us have. I know a lot of people in Alchemist Nation have no idea what that takes to become a master sergeant. So what is that, and then how do you become one?
Well, so you have commissioned and non-commissioned officers in the military. On the commissioned side, it runs lieutenant through. Well, it just depends on which branch you're in. But the on the non-commissioned side, you have 9 levels, and the master sergeant in the Army is the eighth level, and so as that eighth level, they're usually higher level, working with companies. They're usually like uh, the head NCO in a company, and so just the way that it breaks down, there's every level, there's different levels of leadership. And so you start off in the Army as you have to lead yourself first. So but then when you get to a certain level, then you start leading teams, and then you start leading squads, which is made up of several teams, and then you start leading platoons, which are made up of several squads, and then you start leading companies, which are made up of several platoons. And so usually the master sergeant is the senior level in a company, and so
What's the one above that?
sergeant major.
Sergeant Major.
Yeah,
Okay.
so sergeant major is usually at start at the battalion level, and then they're leading several companies. So I held, and the thing is, in the Army, you're allowed to hold jobs of one up or two down, and so I held jobs that were positioned for sergeant majors as a master sergeant. So
Cool.
um, and it sort of depends where you're at. That's very cut and dry when it comes to the way many of the units are in the Army. But I was in hospital units, and in hospital units, it's sort of different because in hospital units you have hospitals, and hospitals you have wards and floors and different sections, and there's also involved civilians and officers and senior officers, and so being in the senior levels of a hospital or senior administration of a hospital, you may have lower levels that technically outrank you, but they still answer to your boss, and you are the boss's right hand man. So, like as a non-commissioned officer, every military unit, or every at least in the Army, and I think it's this way in most of the military units. Every military unit's the head is not just an officer; it's always an officer and a non-commissioned officer team. And so it's a one and two. And if you saw the movie We Were Soldiers, you saw this really played out really well, where you would see where the officer is there and the sergeant major is there, and they work as a team to develop the unit, develop the people. Usually, the non-commissioned officer side is working more directly with the troops, whereas the officer side is working more directly with theory and battle plans and that kind of stuff. And it's the direct leadership on the non-commissioned officer side where you're actually getting the troops there and to follow and complete the mission.
I gotta apologize to Mitch right now. I can see him just gloss over here. He's like, dude, I never
Sorry.
want to manage that many human beings at a single time. That's a lot of bodies. It's a lot of responsibility. That's the
I don't know what you're
opposite of the way
talking
the
about.
cat works.
Put my CEO hat on.
Mitch is like, I'm ambitiously lazy. Like, can we get somebody to do that? Is there a way for me to make more money without doing that?
Well,
Exactly.
here's the thing. When you have a large organization, you have to have layered leadership. And you hear about this all the time in corporate, middle management, right? Most of management is middle management. You got the top
Right.
and you've got the bottom, and then everything else is in between. And so, but being able to function inside of that type of structure, what you become a leader of leaders. And so after a certain period of time, probably after being in the military for about 10 years, when I became a senior non-commissioned officer, now my job was no longer to directly lead the troops. My job was now to lead the leaders and to teach them leadership, teach them how to functionally manage their troops and how to complete. And then I serve as an advisor to the people who are making the big decisions. And so they would come and we would make decisions together, but then it'd be my job as the senior non-commissioned officer to come down and have the other non-commissioned officers that are working for me say and explain so that they understand the decision, get where we're supposed to be going, get the vision and then set them loose to execute. And so it was very fulfilling to be able to teach other people the techniques that you had to learn coming up and learning those techniques of leadership.
And that's why at the summit when we have you speak, you're normally talking about leadership and like because most of our people are earning a good amount of money. Their net worth is up there, and so they have teams. I think
Mhm.
Mike has to be one of those people who dismisses the fact that he does have teams. He's got partners, and so he's like, I got partners, but he dismisses that his partners are running crews all the time, that they're running management teams, that they're doing big projects. He's got partners that are basically his middle management, and then he has his spouse who runs 5 children. It's not 9, Gary. I know it's not a huge amount of people, but he's still running a family of 7. Thanks to
Yeah,
Brenda, she runs a lot of that. She's like
it's not
his
a
master
contest.
sergeant.
Gualter, I don't know, man. I'm listening to Gary, and it sounds a lot like organize and collect. So maybe I'm more on board than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It really is organized and collect. And as we started shifting into Alchemist Nation, it's like spanning locations. I was like, Gary, like I don't know anybody better than at building leaders because we started building leaders, right? We needed to build leaders to run their events and run it really well. And Gary and I were having a pipe one night. He taught me how to smoke a pipe. I didn't know how to smoke. I knew how to smoke cigars, but I could never. I guess I hadn't graduated to being wise enough to smoke a pipe. That was just how life had, come at me.
He was prepping you for being a father. Like you don't get to smoke a pipe until you're in dad mode.
And so Gary was in dad
I
mode
must
one
have
night.
skipped that lesson.
So he adopted child number 10, and he was like, "Look, I make a great number 2." He said, "You're out there, you're doing number ones. Like I don't want to be number 1. I see the mission you're doing. I see what you're driving towards." He said, "I really make a great number 2. Like you tell me where we're going, I'll adjust where needed. I'll push back when he pushes back where needed, and we'll drive towards the mission. Like we're gonna just get the mission done." But it's going to take, a lot of commitment. He said, "How long will you commit to do this? Are you going to stay all the way to the end?" And I was like, "Bro, like I don't have a choice." And I say this to a lot of people. My decision's been made, right? It's not too late for you, but it's too late for me. I made a decision. I got to go do this, and that's where I'm going.
Get to.
I get to. It's an opportunity, right? It's a
Yeah.
blessing. I
Yeah.
think God only gives people who are capable of doing things big things to do.
Yeah.
So he doesn't just hand it off, to everybody because not everybody would take it. So it's an honor to be serving with Gary. Now Gary started the AGIF because Brian Kent said, "I think I can raise $100 million, but we need a structure." And I was like, "Well, I'm not doing this without Gary because we need a structure." I'm willing to do the deals. I'm willing to be involved, but without somebody who can
It's
handle the
the
function,
Alchemist Growth and Income Fund. Is that what AGIF stands for?
you got
That's
it.
correct.
Okay.
AGIF, Alchemist Growth and Income Fund,
Nice.
and it was based on Alchemist Nation, right? We've got our high net worth individuals. We had 3 products. We had the do it yourself education on Instagram, like all the Facebook stuff. The Mitch Jaworski in there being like, "Here's how crypto works." The podcast. Mike Schein talking about business in a backpack. This was the do it yourself. Hey guys, show up. We'll teach you 52 weeks of wealth. We'll show you what to do. Then we had the done with you, which was the coaching, the mastermind, the summit, come in, like we'll do these things with you. And we didn't have the done for you component. And Gary for a long time was like, "Yeah, but like these guys are wealthy. They don't want to do it. Like they just want to have somebody do it." And he was the example of the broker, right? Where he was like starting to broker deals and broker money. And that's where AGIF kind of came together was Gary brought Brian in. Brian said, "I think I could raise the capital. I think I got guys who want to do this." And we started organizing this fund out of nowhere, like just
And
because
Greg started finding properties like crazy.
he started locking things down under agreement, and it was like, well, I guess we got
Yeah.
projects. So,
Nice job. Nice job.
so
Credit
that's
Greg LeBlanc. Nice job, Greg.
yeah. Greg LeBlanc's actually on my list. So we asked Brian who we wanted to interview, and Brian said Gary, and then I asked you, Mike, who you wanted to interview.
Yeah. Doug
You
Doug
said
McGurk.
Mel. You
Yep.
said
And
Doug
then
McGurk
Mel and Steve.
and
Yeah.
Mel and Steve, and
Yeah.
then Mitch said Greg LeBlanc. So I got it on my list, and the
Nice.
order with which it was written. So Doug McGurk will be next week, Greg the week after,
Awesome.
Steve and Mel the week after. Maybe
Nice.
will Steve and Mel be on a cruise with us?
Yeah. Steve and Mel interview them
Live.
on a podcast
There you
at
go.
the poolside.
There you go. Just do
Yeah,
it
we
like
may
a.
be on a cruise together, so maybe I'll just shift that around.
That actually could be fun. Live podcast on a boat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So Gary, as we're getting towards the end here, I want to give Mike and Mitch an opportunity to ask a question, and I have a closing question I'd like to ask that I ask all of our guests. So, uh, gentlemen, if you could ask
Hey,
Gary one
I want
question that you think would be valuable.
I just had a thought. What, 9 kids, any of them in the business with you, doing the real estate?
So I'm trying to train them into that entrepreneurial mindset because I'll tell you, I did not have that entrepreneur. They were not raised with that because I was in a government job. I
Yeah.
did government job and then I went into corporate and that was my mindset until I pivoted. And then I sort of started this self-education and learning. I was like, wow, I've thought about money wrong my whole life. So my daughter helps me keep the books a little bit. We're talking about her working more in the business, but since we pivoted, she's like, Dad, you used to come home and you'd be off at 5 o'clock, and now you work till like 11 o'clock every night. I don't want to do that. And so she's like, I want to go get a job. And so, but I'm working on that. I'm working on with my other daughters that are still in the house, on working with them, trying to get them into the entrepreneurial spirit. And but no one directly is doing the real estate thing. Although I did make my daughter sit through a wholesaling course. But she sat through the wholesaling course. She said, "Yeah, I'm not interested in that." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm not interested in that either."
I don't blame her.
I see all these wholesalers. I've had these guys come to the RIA meetings and they show us all their systems. They're like, oh, and look at this.
Yeah.
And every day I do this, this, this. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, you got a job. I don't want
Yeah.
that.
You got
So,
a grind, hustle
so yeah,
mentality.
it's a
Right.
grind and hustle. That's for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, so I'm working on them as far as entrepreneurialism, and we're in the right circles. We got a lot of good friends that are
It might,
entrepreneurs, and so
it might be
yeah.
a cautionary tale for you, Gualter. You say that Emerson, this is the way he's going to make money, but he may just go get a job.
Dude,
There's
there are
it's funny because you know what Gary said, right? He raised them to think job, and I look at
Yeah.
your kids, Mike, and it's like you raised them. You know, I was an attorney, I was in a
Yeah.
trade, and my kid doesn't have a choice. He's being raised to invest in real estate. That
You'll,
is
s-
his job.
we'll,
I'm
s-
not
Invest
even
as
we'll
a
much as he
see.
parent,
wants
and
when he was little, but
I can look at Mike and Gary's face, just say,
We'll see.
such a rookie dad." Like, you'll learn, Rook. You'll learn,
You
Rook.
know, you don't know teenagers, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, have 9, Gualter, and then at least one, you know.
Woo!
Emerson's gonna pick
Maybe.
up one of Gualter's guitars, and next thing he's like, "I'm gonna be a rock
Rock
star."
star. There we go.
Be a rock star that lives off of passive income. I'm
Yeah.
totally fine with it. You
Yeah,
you
there you
can
go.
be business in a
Yeah.
backpack from stage. It's
Yeah.
totally cool. But that he has to understand the
Awesome.
numbers. He has to understand the game. He has to understand negotiations. He has to understand sales. Without those skills, I haven't raised him well anyway. So that is because
We'll
I am
see.
conscionable and I
I'm
know how to
still
do it.
saying we'll see.
Yeah.
Mike, don't put it out there, man.
Oh, sorry.
I refuse to receive that.
All right.
So let me
My
phrase that
bad.
differently.
You're absolutely right.
I deflect your belief system and I embrace your abundance mindset beliefs
Yeah, so
that
he's definitely going to have an abundance. I'm just saying, I don't know if he's going to go into that. He might just have lots of your money.
I
I mean,
mean,
there's a good
look at
chance he'll go out and broker money for me, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's
look at the whole
that
thing
is the
about
game.
this. Look at the whole thing about the silver tsunami. Why does the silver tsunami exist? Because
The
all
next
these all
generation doesn't
these
want to work.
boomers, they have a next generation that don't want nothing to do
They
with
don't.
they don't want their
Yep.
real estate, they don't want their businesses, they
Right.
want to go do their own thing. That's
Right.
that's the whole thing. So
I've been
good
on
on them.
calls with people in their 60s all week, all last week, this week, and multiple of them are like, "Yeah, dude, my kids they don't want anything,
Mhm.
so I got to simplify this portfolio. I got to sell some stuff off. This lending business makes sense. It
Right.
makes a lot of sense." I was on
Yeah.
with a gentleman 2 hours ago, 3 hours, 5 hours ago. And he told me we looked at all his numbers, ROE, with 8 properties, cash flow $12,000 a month. I was like, dude, this is awesome. You're doing great.
Mhm.
And I looked over at the ROE numbers, and it was 1%, all debt, all paid off, right? So 1% return on equity, 2% return on equity, 5%, 6% return on equity. He had one building with 7% return on equity, but it was only making $600 a month. So we're looking at this portfolio, and I told him, I was like, bro, if you just took out a mortgage on 75% LTV on these properties, 7% lent out at 12, you'd make 5% extra on that equity, you double your income. just from a mortgage, you double your income. Then I told them if you sold it, put all into it, paid the taxes, sold it, paid the taxes, you would end up making 400,000 a year. It'd be like $34,000 a year.
Hmm.
And I showed him, how to
Nice.
do a deferred sales trust, and with the deferred sales trust, he'd make an extra, I think it was $4,000 a month. So
Yeah.
like that little conversation is something that a baby boomer cares about, but the young kids can't do.
Hmm.
Right? Like
For
with
sure.
mom and dad's money, they don't want to do the work. They're not interested, but it is a like to get to where mom and dad are, where they got, $3-4 million sitting there in equity, you have to go through that pain, right? You have to go through the ownership of the asset for a long enough period of time to pay down the debt.
Hmm.
But obviously, yeah,
I also think it depends when the kids start listening to the parents, because my father had a ton of real estate, okay? But when we talk now, he's like, no way. I was like, I
Hmm.
want all in stocks. He, sold everything, sold some very big properties, and took that money, had an attorney who was in 1031, and he's like, I'm not 1031ing, I'm just paying the taxes, and I'm gonna go take this and put it in the market and buy good stocks, and you know, and he doesn't do any real estate now, just owns
Hmm.
his summer house and his winter house. That's it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So,
as you get older, it
yeah.
makes more sense to simplify. It makes more
Yeah.
sense to get rid of the work. Yeah, he went and your dad did some really cool developments in Rhode Island. Like he did
Yep.
some big projects that still exist today, but people drive by those areas like all the time. So Gary, Mitch, question, Mitch, what do you got for Gary?
You know,
As a
I
man who
think,
has no kids.
well, and it's
That he
funny you
knows
say,
of.
you want to talk about,
That he knows of.
you
That he
want to
That
talk
he
knows
knows
of.
about,
of.
I wasn't that guy.
It's not due to lack of effort or lack of practice. So,
That might have been some of my friends I grew up with. I was actually the dad
Okay.
of the group. I think that's why I was all set. I felt like I was a dad when I was 21, just watching after my friends. Um,
Nice.
it's funny though, because with those opposites, and this potentially might be a rhetorical question, but like you talked about structure earlier, right? And you look to Gary for that. And you know me, I'm probably the polar opposite of structure. In fact, it like makes me feel like icky when there's too much structure.
Mm.
Um, and
That's why
you
we're
need it.
friends.
why we get along.
Yeah. You need it. You need it with like to run a fund. You need it. I mean, you, me, and Mike have talked about doing a fund years, and it's like, all right, well, who's going
Yeah.
to run it? And like, none of us really wanted to do it because like we didn't want to deal with that structure part,
Right.
right? So it's like, well, I want to do it, but I don't want to deal with the everyday structure nonsense. So Gary, like this kind of default structure, knack for structure, I'm assuming this is from being in the military. Like, do you leverage a lot of like that life and like the rules and guidelines and things you learned in the military when you kind of attack things in regards to like how you go about structuring them?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know that it came from the military because I think it was innate in me. I'm a high
Okay.
C, and almost equal D on my disc profile, and so I think a lot of it was there already. I definitely the military brought it out, and I learned more how to use that such and how to approach things systematically. So it's definitely there. It's funny that you mentioned that about funds and wishing you could run a fund but didn't want to deal with the back end of it. That's I've actually had somebody else contact me who asked me, somebody in Alchemist Nation, Larry Steinhaus, and he's like, I'm going to start a fund. I need you to do for me what you're doing for Gualter on that fund. I want you to run the back end of it, right? And so then when I was at Bill Walsh Mastermind this past week, and Larry's like, you know what? You should contact Sanjay, who's the from Avestor, who's the portal. He's like, find out what it would cost, or find out how you could become a certified investor consultant. And so I did, and he's like,
Great
we
idea.
don't have that. I was like, you want that? He's like, I think that'd be a great idea. Let's do it. So now we're going to work with that and put together a consulting program through that where we can help train people to run the back end of funds for people that are like you who just rather just you want to get the money in and then you want to go do the deals, but you just don't want to mess with anything else. And the problem, and this is one of the things I see, and this is actually it's actually I've got like three people on my uh, calendar that want to talk to me about this because I mentioned this last night. I ran my meetup last night, the Alchemist Nation Tampa meetup. So I mentioned this in the meetup that
Gary
if
also
there's,
runs a meetup.
yeah, I
It's
run meetups,
crazy. A lot of
run
things
several
going on.
meetups. So,
Yeah,
but
several meetups.
there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people that are raising money and pooling other people's money to go do deals, which works fine until it doesn't. And then when it doesn't, and somebody files a lawsuit or something, and then SEC gets wind of it, and that's the way people end up in jail. And so a lot of people should be doing things under the proper structure that are really riding a fine line and
Totally
not
agree
doing it.
with that.
Yeah.
And they don't even know they're doing
And they
something.
don't know they're doing it
No,
wrong.
I've been to
That's the
RIAs
problem.
where they're like, "Oh yeah, we're doing this development, and we got 20 of our friends, and they're all giving, some gave 10 grand, some gave
Yeah.
50, and I'm just sitting there going,
Yeah, so and it's something. It was actually something like that. I was on a mastermind, and some guy was in there. He's like, "Hey, I got this deal, and I'm helping him raise money for it." And blah blah blah. And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 bro! You understand that what you're saying, the words you're coming out of your mouth right now, are illegal. It's not
yeah,
legal for you to talk
yeah,
like that,
yeah,
right?" And then I was like, "So what's your part in this?" He's like, "Well, they promised me 1% of the GP if I raise money into it." I was like, You realize that that's not legal. They
yeah,
can't do
Also
that."
illegal.
So yeah. So it's funny because this guy went back to that guy and told him I had this guy show up on my calendar. I had no idea. I'm like, who is this person? And I click on it and it says, yeah, so I was talking with this guy. He said that what I'm doing is illegal and I may need to hire you to help me out with this. So I'm
nice,
like,
nice.
so
I
so yeah,
usually
so it's
I usually start with when I hear that, I'm like, so is yours a 506B or a 506C? And then just watch the blank
yeah, exactly.
stare and then go,
And this is
well,
what I asked the guy. I was like, hey, have you got the PPM? What's the
yeah,
P Where's the
right.
PPM? He's like, what's the PPM? I'm like, dude,
Oh,
if you're gonna raise money into something, you got to have the PPM, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
anyway, it's interesting how this has come about because of my work with Alchemist Nation, helping out in the fund. And really it's not difficult. It's structure. It's being able to put the structure together and monitor that
amazing.
structure. Because and this is I had a discussion with Sanjay about it. It's like he's like, do not onboard anybody. Don't onboard investors. That has to be the fund manager's job to onboard the investors because that's where you really get to know your investors. So
All
so
right.
but so let the fund managers raise money, let them onboard their investors, and then let the fund managers um, go do the deals. And then if we can provide a service that takes care of the rest of the structure behind that, we think that that's going to be very helpful for people. And just being able to get out and show people how to do it right, how to do it legally, so that we keep people. And I was like, look, it's not cheap. It's definitely not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than bail. If you think of it that way,
Yeah.
cheaper than bail. It's a
Who's
good
the
it's a good
who's
structure.
who's the fund manager for AGIF? Is that Gualter?
All four of us, we're all
Okay,
equally invested in it.
gotcha.
So,
Awesome.
Yeah, so any one
did
of us
that
is a
answer your
fund
question,
manager.
Mitchell? I hope
That's
I
a
hope it
long
answered your
answer.
question.
I
Sorry,
mean,
I
That was
sort of went off
awesome.
on track.
we
That was an
we
awesome answer.
we got no, we got into better info. So
Yeah.
I love how you like accidentally, but essentially, whether you've realized it or not, have become a salesperson for Avester. So you need to
Yeah.
get on a commission structure with them.
Yeah. Referral,
Yeah,
I think.
So
yeah. Well,
we got a question I like to ask in all the podcasts that I've run in the past, and that is, if you go back in time, what are the three pieces of advice that you would give your 20-year-old self, that the same advice that you would give now your 20-year-old children as they're going out into the world and they're paving their way and they're planning their lives out? What piece of advice would you go back to 20-year-old Gary Eaker and say, hey, here are the three things that are going to come up, or three things that you need to know to be successful in life and business, to be happier, richer, wealthier, just generally better in your life and as a whole? What would those three pieces of advice be?
read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Number
Mm,
one, get yourself a financial education and understand that the schools aren't there to do it. You have to get it on your own. So that's definitely number one. Number two, build your network, make partners, and just continually build on your network and add value to other people. Always add value to other people without expecting anything in return. And
mm,
number three,
that's good.
buy real estate. The best time to buy real estate is yesterday. The second best time to buy real estate is today. So buy real estate and you won't regret it. Those are my three.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm with all of those. I'm call Emerson right now and be like, hey man, there's only three things you need to know. Because you're gonna buy real estate. It's in your blood. It's who you are. So yeah, before we jump off the podcast, for everybody who's listening, this is a show we plan on doing every Wednesday at 4:30. We will be traveling. A bunch of us will be traveling in 2 weeks. So if there's somebody you want to have us interview inside Alchemist Nation, that's one of our requirements. They must be somebody within the community that you're inspired by, that you kind of want to know more about. Then shoot a text to me or Mitch or Mike or Gary, and let us know who you want on the podcast. Also, like, share, subscribe. It's a big deal. The more you like, the more you comment, the more you share the posts, the more other people get to learn about what's actually happening inside Alchemist Nation. If somebody needs to learn leadership or they're considering the military, today's podcast was actually really valuable.
Would have been good.
If
Yeah.
they're tasting their way through the different options of making money, they considering being a money broker, they're considering wholesaling, they're considering flipping properties or doing new construction or development. There was a lot of stuff that was presented on here. ADUs, renting RVs. There was a lot of different things that were presented. Running funds, the do's and not to do's.
Indentured servitude. We learned that.
Indentured
spend a
servitude
year.
right at the very beginning.
Spend a
Here's a
year.
way to get people to work for free for a year.
Work for free.
Man, that was what an opener. Yeah, so this the pastor, asked me to come down. So
Has Gualter hung out with that pastor?
Yeah, right. I was gonna say, I feel like that's what we did. Hey, come on the 52 weeks of wealth.
guys, 52 weeks to wealth. You're gonna be on there, Mike. I need you to do the book of the week. Mitch, rap quote every week.
Mitch,
If
rap
Mike's
quote.
down, you do the book.
In a year, we'll give you a job.
In the year, there'll be a job. There'll be an opportunity at the end of this. So for anybody who doesn't know, Mike is a holistic attorney. Close with him. Go close. He's the closer. He's the keeper of the
Appreciate
books.
that. Yep.
Mitch Jaworski wrote the book, Scaredy Cat Guide to Real Estate Investing, and Gary Eaker is obviously running the Alchemist Growth and Income Fund.
So awesome.
Guys, to take us out of here, Mike, what's the whole point of all this?
Massive income from passive income in my case. Yeah.
And Mitch, how do we do that?
You organize and collect.
Remember, the point is not to work, it's to generate income. Cheers to your success, your choice. Always work with the best.
Best.
Peace.
you
Thanks,
Saturday.
Gary. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Hey, Gary,
Thank
before
you.
we log off, who do you think should be the next guest?
Hmm.
I thought we already had.
Put him on the spot.
We need
You
more.
never go
We need
wrong.
more.
You never go wrong with Larry Steinhaus.
I saw it come.